The rain had started before sunrise, thin, slanted needles blown sideways by a cold wind that swept across the training compound like a warning. By 0700, the field behind Barracks 4 had turned into a churned wasteland of brown water, slippery grass, and deep pockets of mud that swallowed boots whole. Every soldier hated days like this. Training became harder, tempers shorter, and mistakes more obvious. But for Private Elena Rios, this morning was worse than most. She had arrived at Fort Ironwood only 4 weeks ago, joining a platoon of young men who were eager, competitive, and too proud for their own good. Rios didn't fit into their hierarchy. She didn't brag. She didn't complain. She didn't join their late-night card games or their trash talk sessions. She moved quietly, trained precisely, listened more than she spoke. Behavior they misinterpreted as weakness. The truth was, she simply didn't care to impress them, not until they pushed her too far. The platoon was gathered in formation when it started. A few snickers, a passing shoulder check, and then someone behind her muttered, "Fake seal, probably washed out. Look at her, too small to be real." Another voice added, louder this time, "Maybe she should take a shower. She smells like the mud she crawls in." A couple soldiers laughed, the sound sharp and childish. Sergeant Halter, overseeing PT, didn't bother intervening. Either he didn't hear it, or he didn't want to get in the middle of whatever petty rivalry had grown between them. Rios kept her eyes forward, hands behind her back, expression calm. But the men mistook her silence for fear. When Halter dismissed them for the next drill, mud crawls and endurance pushes, most soldiers groaned. But a small circle of them exchanged looks, the kind that meant trouble. Rios noticed, but she didn't react. She walked toward the starting lane, wiping rain off her lashes, her boots already sinking into the soft earth. "Hey, Rios," one of the guys called out. "Think fast." She turned just as two of them rushed her from opposite sides. She tried to pivot, but one hooked her elbow while the other grabbed her vest strap. Before she could brace herself, they shoved her hard, too hard. She slipped. Mud splashed high as she went down into a deep, cold puddle. A roar of laughter erupted around her. Rios stayed submerged for a second, rain hitting the surface above her like bullets. The mud clung to her uniform, her hair, her face. She could taste grit on her tongue. The cold should have shocked her, but it didn't. Her breathing stayed steady, controlled. She had endured far, far worse. When she pushed up to her hands and knees, another soldier jeered, "There you go. Now you look like what you really are. Take a shower," another barked. "Or just stay down there. Maybe it's where you belong." Rios wiped the mud from her eyes. Her hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from restraint. She wasn't angry. She wasn't embarrassed, but her patience was wearing thin. The soldiers continued circling like a pack sensing vulnerability. "Come on, Rios," one taunted. "Tell us the truth. Did you even pass BUD/S? Or is that just what you told the recruiters?" A few others nudged each other, laughing. Someone even kicked water toward her to rinse her off. She slowly rose to her feet. Mud dripped from her sleeves, her vest, her hair, but her posture was straight, unbending. She met each laughing face one by one, her expression unreadable. The field went quiet, not fully, but enough for the men to sense something was off. This wasn't the reaction they expected. No shouting, no tears, no excuses, just calm, too calm. She picked a clump of mud off her sleeve and flicked it aside. "You done?" she asked softly. The simplicity of the question unsettled them more than anger would have. Rain continued to fall. The wind swept across the field again, colder now, heavier. A few of the soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Rios wasn't a victim, she wasn't intimidated, and she definitely wasn't what they thought she was, because beneath the soaked uniform and the mud-smeared skin stood a Navy SEAL veteran who had survived things these boys couldn't even imagine. And she was very, very close to reminding them of that. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain tapping against the metal bleachers. The platoon formed a loose circle around Rios, the mud-stained woman who stood as still as a stone statue in a storm. Private Logan, the loudest of the troublemakers, scoffed, "What, you gonna cry? Or you finally gonna tell us what unit you really served in Laundry Division?" More laughter. Rios blinked slowly, unimpressed. She didn't need their approval. She didn't even need their respect. But what she needed, what she was trained for, was control, and right now she was hanging on to it by a thread. Sergeant Halter finally stalked over, boots sinking with wet squelches. "What's going on here?" Instant silence. No one wanted to admit anything. Not a single soldier pointed fingers. Not one stepped forward. Halter watched them carefully, then turned his gaze to Rios. "Private Rios, is there a problem?" She opened her mouth to answer, but then she stopped. There was a moment, a blink where something inside her snapped into place. A decision, a line drawn not in sand, but in mud and rain and humiliation. "No, Sergeant," she said calmly, "no problem at all." Halter nodded and walked off to mark the next drill. And that was it. That was the moment every soldier in the circle should have understood. Elena Rios wasn't backing down. She was preparing. As Halter retreated, Logan stepped closer, emboldened by what he saw as her submission. He grinned. "See that? She's scared to snitch. Probably scared we'll toss her in again." He bent down, scooping a dripping handful of mud. He raised it toward her chest. Before he could smear it, Rios took one step forward. Just one, but the shift in the air was instant, almost physical. Logan's grin faded. His hand paused midair. A few soldiers behind him exchanged confused glances. Something had changed. Rios stood with her shoulders squared, weight evenly balanced, hands loose, relaxed, not in the posture of a cornered private, but with the economy and precision of someone trained far, far beyond the level of basic infantry. They didn't recognize it, but their instincts did. "Back up," Logan muttered nervously, though he tried to maintain his smirk. Rios tilted her head a fraction. "Why, you wanted my attention." Her voice was calm. Too calm. Logan's jaw tightened. "You think you're tough?" "No," she replied softly. "I know what I am." He scoffed again, but this time with less confidence. "And what's that?" Rios didn't answer with words. She answered by moving, lightning fast. She stepped into him, her foot slicing through mud without slipping. Her hand caught his wrist, not hard, not violently, but with the unshakable grip of someone who had trained thousands of hours in joint manipulation. Logan's eyes widened as the mud he'd grabbed dripped from his frozen hand. He tried to yank free. He couldn't. "You ever train with someone who knows what they're doing?" she asked quietly. He swallowed. "Let go." Rios didn't. She rotated his wrist an inch, just an inch, and Logan dropped to one knee with a gasp as the pressure shot up his arm. "What the—" "Rios, stop!" His buddies rushed forward, but Rios released him before they could even reach her. Logan collapsed backward, shocked, cradling his wrist. She didn't look at him. She looked at the others. "You want to test me too?" The entire circle hesitated. Rain hammered down harder now, turning the moment into something almost surreal. The woman they thought was weak, timid, or fake stood like a blade in the storm, sharp, unwavering, forged. Private Mason, the second, toughest in the group, stepped forward, not aggressive, curious. "Where'd you learn that?" Rios held his gaze. "Where do you think?" they whispered among themselves. Maybe she wasn't lying. Could she really be? "Nah, SEALs don't look like that." Rios exhaled slowly, letting the rain wash more mud from her face. "I didn't come here to prove anything," she said, "but if you push me, I won't step back." Logan stood shakily, anger replacing his shock. "You think one trick makes you special?" Rios didn't even look at him. "No, but it was enough for you." Sergeant Halter blew his whistle from across the field. "Platoon, line up." The soldiers scrambled into formation, shaken, silent. But one fact weighed heavier than the mud on their boots. Elena Rios wasn't pretending. She wasn't weak, and whatever she was, they had just disturbed something they didn't understand yet. The rain had turned from a light drizzle into a relentless downpour. Mud clung to every surface, the soldiers' boots, their uniforms, even their faces. What had started as a simple morning drill had evolved into a stage for something far larger than anyone anticipated. Elena Rios stood at the edge of the training lane, water running down her face, mud dripping from her sleeves, and yet she radiated a calm that unnerved everyone around her. The platoon had lined up in formation, but the usual chatter, the confident laughter, the smug grins, they were gone. What replaced it was a hesitant tension, a quiet realization that something was very, very wrong for them. Private Logan, nursing his sore wrist from Part 2's encounter, dared to speak. You're not just another recruit, are you?" Rios didn't respond immediately. Instead, she scanned the line of soldiers. Those who had shoved her, laughed at her, doubted her, and made eye contact with each one. In those eyes, she didn't see fear, not yet. She saw curiosity, disbelief, and the faint trace of respect beginning to take root. Sergeant Halter clapped his hands once sharply. "All right, let's test your skills. All recruits, line up. Rios, you demonstrate." The platoon groaned collectively, some under their breath, some audibly. Demonstrate. This was supposed to be a routine drill. Push-ups, mud crawls, obstacle courses, but the words carried weight now. Rios had their attention, whether they wanted to admit it or not. With a small, controlled breath, she stepped forward. The mud squelched under her boots. Every movement was precise, economical, fluid. A silent declaration that this was no longer a game. The drill began. Obstacles, low walls, climbing ropes, and tactical maneuvers, they were all part of the standard routine, but Rios turned them into a showcase. She vaulted over walls with grace that seemed effortless, slipped under ropes without disturbing a drop of water, and executed hand maneuvers that made her earlier confrontation with Logan look like child's play. Private Mason, who had watched her quietly during Part 2, whispered, "She moves like a seal." The others turned, shocked. "No way, there's no way." As Rios navigated the course, she didn't just move, she commanded. Every footstep, every hand placement, every motion was calculated. There was no hesitation, no wasted energy, no doubt. It was clear to everyone present. She had done this before, many times. Then came the final challenge, a mock takedown drill. 2 soldiers advanced at her simultaneously, aiming to test her reflexes. They lunged, expecting a stumble or a sloppy defense. Rios reacted before their hands even reached her. In one seamless motion, she sidestepped the first soldier, grabbed his arm, and gently but firmly redirected his momentum into a controlled fall onto the mud. She pivoted to the second attacker, trapped his wrist, twisted once, and the soldier collapsed beside his comrade. The field fell silent, the rain fell harder, even Sergeant Halter paused, hand midair with the whistle. No one moved, no one laughed, no one dared breathe too loudly. Then, in that tense silence, Logan's voice broke, trembling, astonished, "Holy, she's real, she's actually real." It wasn't a joke, it wasn't arrogance, it was the dawning truth. This wasn't some overhyped recruit trying to impress or bluff her way through training. This was a Navy SEAL veteran. Rios stood over the soldiers she had taken down, mud dripping from her uniform, rain streaming through her hair. Her breathing was steady, controlled, almost serene. She looked nothing like a seasoned combat veteran, yet every movement, every glance, every subtle command of her body screamed experience, discipline, and strength. Mason swallowed hard. We underestimated her. Logan groaned, massaging his sore arm. I didn't think. Rios cut him off, her voice calm, almost gentle. You didn't think because you were too busy underestimating me. That's a mistake you won't make twice. Sergeant Halter finally recovered from his shock. Private Rios, well done, outstanding performance. He gave a small nod of respect. The soldiers, still dripping in mud, looked at her differently now. Gone were the mockery and scorn. In their place was respect, awe, and a quiet understanding that she was someone who had lived, trained, and fought at a level few of them would ever reach. For the first time since arriving at the platoon, Elena Rios allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. She didn't need to prove herself. She never had. But sometimes others needed to see the truth for themselves. The rain washed the mud from her skin, but it couldn't wash away the lesson that had been learned that day. You don't judge a Navy SEAL by the size of her uniform or the quiet of her demeanor. You recognize her by her skill, her courage, and the calm confidence that can move mountains or silence a platoon. And on that soaked training field, in front of young soldiers who had doubted her, Elena Rios reminded everyone why legends are never made by words. They are made by actions.